In a culture that is just, obsessed with speed, with visibility, with being online all the time, we seem to reward the voice that speaks first.
The one that fills the void.
Exactly. The one who fills any conversational void.
Yeah.
But we're sort of conditioned to believe that talking is the measure of competence, right?
Okay.
It's proof of confidence, or at least a necessary show of value.
It is.
But is that really true? I mean, why do we feel this overwhelming, this almost compulsive urge to fill every single silent moment? It feels like a really high-stakes psychological question right from the jump.
It is the defining psychological trap of our era. And the answer, well, it's rooted in insecurity, not in strategy.
That's insecurity.
Yes. Most people talk too much because they feel this inherent need to be seen or to be heard. They mistake volume or even just the speed of their response for evidence of intelligence. So our mission today is really to tear down that assumption. We are going to examine the counterintuitive truth that real growth, lasting understanding, and genuine, unshakable influence, they're all built in silence, not in noise. This deep dive is about finding the strategic power gained by intentionally speaking less and observing. Well, so much more. It's what you could call the discipline of quiet.
I love that framing, the discipline of quiet. Because when you really look at it, it outlines this core trap so perfectly. I think about so many professional environments, where the moment there's a 3-second pause, someone just jumps in.
It's almost Pavlovian, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
If they don't jump in, the silence will indict them somehow, like they're not contributing.
Precisely. And that need to perform, that need to demonstrate your value by making sound is a critical mistake. If you find yourself always planning your next sentence, you're performing, but you're performing for your own ego.
Right. You're not actually in the conversation.
You're failing to gather the necessary data to actually succeed. Your love, you're rehearsing your witty comment or your perfect defense or that planned rebuttal. And in doing so, you're missing the crucial data the other person is revealing.
Which is what, exactly?
Their feelings, their fears, the truths they're maybe a little reluctant to express.
So the initial barrier to mastery isn't a knowledge gap at all. It's an absolute failure of self-control. It's the ego just demanding a spotlight, and the result is this massive loss of leverage.
That is the core thesis right there. Real confidence is quiet. The truly masterful person, well, they know they don't need to prove they're in the room.
They're there.
They already know. And they recognize the immense value of the information being exchanged. So the first step to achieving any kind of mastery, whether it's in negotiation, leadership, or even just personal relationships, is imposing the discipline of holding your own thoughts back.
It's a choice.
It's a choice of strength. You pause your own internal dialogue. You mute your ego so you can fully process the external reality as it unfolds. And that single act of restraint, that is the foundation for everything else we're going to discuss.
Okay, let's unpack this discipline. Because holding your thoughts in a high-stakes environment, that feels like psychological self-torture for a lot of people. We need a framework for how to actually apply this.
We do. And we start with phase 2, the strategic framework. The very first pillar is what we'll call the discipline of full attention.
All right, let's start with the concept itself. Holding your thoughts for deeper understanding. It sounds simple, but my internal voice, it is constantly on. Especially when I'm listening to someone I disagree with.
It's incredibly challenging, and we need to be very clear about what we mean. This isn't about being weak or, unprepared.
Being passive.
No. It's having the extreme self-control to prioritize understanding the situation completely over the impulse to immediately state your position. When someone speaks, they are, in effect, showing you a map of who they are.
A map.
Yes. Their words are the coordinates, but their delivery, their tone, their body language, that's the topography. They reveal their values, their underlying thinking patterns, and their current emotional state. If your brain is busy crafting a response, if you are formulating that perfect counterpoint,
You're just staring at your own map.
you're ignoring the map they're handing you, and you will respond to the surface, not the substance.
Okay, let's apply that to a really detailed scenario. Give us a high-stakes example where holding the thought completely changes the outcome.
Let's use the high-stakes stakeholder meeting. Picture a corporate leader, maybe a senior VP, and she's dealing with a critical client, a major investor, let's say.
Okay.
And this client's flagship project isn't just delayed, it is bleeding budget. The client is there to express deep, unreserved frustration. Now, if the VP is listening with the intention to rehearse a defense,
Which is the natural instinct.
it is. If she's scrolling through her mental notes about technical fixes, vendor excuses, or revised recovery plans, she is going to miss the real human problem.
So she'll hear the words, the project is off track, and immediately jump to, here's how we fix the track.
Exactly. But the client's words about the project flaw are merely the vehicle for the real complaint. The deep listener, the disciplined VP, holds back her prepared fixes. She actively chooses to just absorb.
So what is she looking for?
She's focusing on the client's body language, the white knuckles gripping the table, the sharp, clipped tone of his voice, the way he avoided eye contact with the VP's direct report when he mentioned a specific deadline.
Ah, the details.
By giving full attention to the delivery, the VP catches the truth in the, let's call it the space around the words. She realizes the underlying reason for the outburst isn't the project delay itself. It's the feeling that the client has been disrespected, that he's been kept in the dark, or that her team doesn't truly care about the impact on his business.
So the VP's internal response, because of that disciplined listening, it shifts completely.
Yes. The leader realizes the first step isn't technical at all, it's relational. Instead of launching into a 10-point recovery plan, she might simply pause, maintain that eye contact, and say something like, I hear the severity of the delay, but what I'm also hearing is deep frustration, and perhaps a feeling that we haven't given you the respect and attention you deserve over the last quarter. Is that where the true pain point lies? She doesn't need to guess. The tone and the body language already confirmed it. She caught the truth that was totally invisible to anyone just focused on the text of the complaint.
That makes the process of holding back the thought feel less like passivity and more like deep cover intelligence gathering.
That's a great way to put it.
But here's my immediate challenge. Let's bring in the fear of missing the moment. I mean, we've all been in situations. A live, rapid-fire negotiation, a complex legal hearing, or a board meeting where capital's moving instantly, where if I pause to wait for all these subtle emotional signals, I risk losing the opportunity. The window to deliver a critical rebuttal or inject a necessary time-sensitive fact that could change the vote, it closes. Doesn't patience just equate to delay in those situations? And doesn't delay in those high-velocity moments mean losing the advantage entirely? It feels dangerous.
That is a completely legitimate tactical fear. It really is. And it speaks to the difference between a skirmish and a campaign.
A skirmish and a campaign.
Yes. You are worried about the momentary loss of a verbal jab, but you gain a massive, often decisive advantage in the long run. This is about earning the listen.
Earning the listen.
While you might sacrifice the instant win of a quick reply, your eventual words earned through patience, through thorough data absorption, and a deep understanding of the client's true position, they will carry exponentially more weight.
How does that work psychologically, though? Why does waiting make my eventual words more powerful?
Because when you demonstrate that you respect the other person enough to give them their space, they feel heard, they feel validated and emotionally safe.
Yeah.
That level of respect dramatically lowers their internal defenses. It opens them up to your response. When you finally speak, you don't need to impress them with the volume or speed of your voice. You impress them by showing how thoroughly you absorbed their reality.
So your response isn't just a counter-argument, it's integrated.
It's integrated. And it addresses the true core problem, not just the surface symptom they yelled about. Your silence, the discipline of holding back, builds the necessary credibility for your eventual speech to land with genuine, lasting influence. You shift the conversation from a reactive argument to a strategic consensus-building exercise. You win the war, not just the battle.
So silence isn't just listening, it's a reputation builder. It's an investment of attention that pays out in influence later on.
Precisely. And that brings us very naturally to the next section. It's about using that silence strategically, choosing words with extreme intention. We're moving past simply listening and into the active deployment of silence.
Okay, so the core idea here is choosing words with intention. The goal is to stop talking just out of habit. For a lot of people, and I include myself in this sometimes, stopping talking for no reason is almost physically painful. How do we break that loop?
We break it by making speaking a conscious strategic choice, not an impulse. Speaking less is a highly conscious decision to conserve your mental energy and allow clarity, not noise, to surface.
So it's about breaking a habit.
It's about breaking the habit of talking just to keep the flow going. You have to apply an essential litmus test to every single sentence you consider uttering. Does this add significant value? Does it bring clarity, peace, or actionable progress?
And if the answer is no,
If the honest answer, judged dispassionately, is no, you stay quiet. If you are speaking simply to keep the air moving, you are creating noise, not value. And you are actively protecting your own peace by protecting your voice.
Let's visualize the outcome of violating that litmus test. Tell me about the overly chatty consultant.
Right. Imagine a high-value consulting scenario. We have two professionals in the room. Consultant A feels compelled to comment on every single aspect of the meeting, every minor update, every peripheral risk, every piece of input from the team.
He's trying to show he's engaged and worth the money.
He talks because he needs to justify his massive fee. He needs to perform. But what is the immediate consequence? He spreads his attention too thin. He gets pulled into distracting, minor arguments about trivial details. And because his input is constant, it quickly loses all novelty and all credibility.
People start tuning him out.
They start mentally checking out because they know his input is usually just a repetition or a low-value commentary. He's draining his own strategic capital with every word.
Okay, so contrast that with the alternative.
Now, contrast that with the strategic observer, consultant B. This consultant absorbs data silently for extended periods, an hour, maybe 2 hours, perhaps an entire discovery meeting. He's not talking, he's processing, cross-referencing, synthesizing. He ignores that powerful impulse to prove he's smart. Then, perhaps only once, at the absolute strategic moment, he breaks his silence. He delivers a concise, insightful solution that frames the underlying issue in a way no one else had even considered.
And everyone's attention snaps right to him.
Because his single, focused input moves the entire decision-making process forward decisively. His silence protected his focus, conserved his mental energy, and, crucially, it charged his eventual contribution with massive, undeniable power. His output is respected because his input is rare.
I see the power shift completely.
Oh.
But here is the major pushback in a contemporary setting. Let's talk about the counterargument. Appearing passive, or worse, unengaged. We work in these highly collaborative environments, agile teams, constant Slack channels, rapid-fire brainstorming sessions. If I am always observing and silently asking myself, is this useful, before I speak, I risk appearing slow, disinterested, or that I lack the quick-witted input that leadership often publicly values. Silence, in that kind of context, can sometimes feel like a lack of contribution, or worse, a lack of preparation or enthusiasm.
That is the fear of being perceived as unenthusiastic, but that fear is rooted in confusing performance with presence.
Performance versus presence. Okay, unpack that.
This is the critical nuance. When you talk constantly, you are chasing attention. You're performing for the audience in the room. When you practice disciplined silence, you are grounded. You are present. You are not missing anything because you are acutely focused on reception. True collaboration doesn't require constant noise. It requires high-quality, targeted input.
So how does the disciplined, silent person signal that they're engaged without speaking? How do they show they're not just zoning out?
They do it through deliberate, nonverbal cues. They maintain consistent, thoughtful eye contact. They take strategic, visible notes, which signals to others that they are processing the information seriously.
Ah, so you're actively showing your process.
Yes. They use micro-expressions of curiosity or deep thought, a slight head tilt, a frown of concentration, which tells the room, I'm engaged in complex thought right now. People notice when input is given only when it's absolutely needed. It protects your focus, and more importantly, it stops you from leaking emotional energy on points that don't matter.
So you build a reputation.
You build a powerful reputation where people actually lean in when you finally speak because they know your words are not going to be wasted noise. You have established a pattern of high-value communication.
That's a crucial distinction. You're not frozen. You are filtering. It shifts the perception of silence from disinterest to concentration. Okay, so let's take that skill of intense observation and focus it on hidden truths. We move from observing the environment to interpreting the unsaid.
This is where we transition into reading the subtext. This is the strategic detective work. The premise is simple. People rarely tell the truth straight out, especially when the truth is uncomfortable or shameful or sensitive.
They hedge.
They shift, they dodge, they talk in circles because they feel unsafe or are still processing the issue themselves. We are all trained to listen to the obvious words, but true insight lies not there. It's in the hesitation, the change of topic, the subjects they intentionally skip. That vacuum of information holds critical data.
So we should pay attention to the silence within their speech, The momentary stutters, the sudden shift in the narrative flow. It's focusing on the vacuum of information they leave behind the obvious words.
Exactly. Let's look at the scenario of the hesitant job candidate. A professional interviewer, utilizing this discipline, asks a candidate about a significant 2-year gap in their resume.
Okay, the classic tough question.
The candidate avoids a direct explanation. Instead, they start talking about unrelated minor achievements from the period before the gap. They're speaking fast, using excessive detail on trivial, safe matters. A superficial listener hears the positive words and just moves on, satisfied that the candidate is articulate.
But the deep listener is watching the whole performance, not just the script.
The deep listener is paying attention to what changed in the candidate's demeanor the moment the question was asked. Was there an immediate eye shift away from the interviewer? Did their speaking pace suddenly accelerate from normal to rapid? Did they subtly shift their posture, maybe tightening their hands? The deep listener realizes the weight of the skipped subject, and they understand that the deflection is the answer.
The deflection is the answer.
It tells you the gap is highly sensitive, not that it doesn't exist. And this data prepares the interviewer to ask a different, more targeted question later, or to simply understand the risk inherent in that hidden information.
That deep listener now has leverage because they know where the vulnerability lies. But let's address a darker counterargument here. Waiting patiently for deflection. Well, it's often impractical, especially when you're dealing with active deceit.
Go on.
If someone is clearly lying, trying to hide critical information, or actively manipulating a situation, say in a financial audit or a legal context, isn't it necessary to push? Or to gently corner them with known facts, to force transparency? If you just let the space and silence do the work, you risk being intentionally manipulated or stalling necessary, urgent progress. You risk letting a lie take root.
That is the risk you run when you confuse observation with weakness. But let's look at the nuance here. Patience invites honesty. Rushing in to confront, cornering, or accusing someone, even gently, only serves to escalate their defensiveness.
You put them in fight or flight mode.
Instantly. It closes the door on genuine communication because they shift from defensive avoidance to outright conflict. The goal is observation with care. It's about staying grounded and steady. By remaining calm and quiet, you avoid projecting judgment. And paradoxically, the speaker may eventually feel safe enough to fill the silence with the truth they were circling.
Why does my calm presence make them want to reveal the truth? That feels counterintuitive.
Because your calm presence demonstrates that you are not reactive. If they see you are not jumping on the hook, they realize that the path of deflection is actually more psychologically draining than simply stating the truth. The subtle avoidance is the initial data point. It tells you the subject has weight. By holding that space without aggression, you give them the invitation they need to step out of the avoidance and into honesty. If you confront them, they are focused on beating you. If you are calmly silent, they're focused on their own internal conflict, and often the need to release the pressure of the lie just wins out.
That makes the calm listener the architect of the conversation's environment, not merely the reactor to external stimuli. This links perfectly to internal regulation, which I think leads us to the critical pause.
This is often the most difficult discipline to master because it deals with our deepest physiological instincts. When anger, frustration, fear, or even powerful excitement suddenly rise, the immediate biological instinct is a verbal reaction. Lashing out, defending aggressively, or just speaking impulsively. This is the precise moment you must impose the critical pause. It is the gap between the feeling and the action. And if you can widen that gap even by 3 seconds, you prevent regret and the loss of respect that always follows an emotional outburst.
We've all sent the email or said the thing, and then you regret it 30 seconds later when the adrenaline starts to subside. It's an almost perfect example of a neural hijack.
It is a pure hijack. Let's use the scenario, the crisis email. You are the listener, and you receive a high-stakes, harshly critical email, perhaps from a senior manager or a difficult client.
Okay.
It's emotionally charged. Maybe it unfairly assigns blame for a massive failure that wasn't primarily your fault. The flood of indignation, the adrenaline, the need for immediate justice, that is your amygdala responding to a perceived attack. Your immediate instinct is to type a defensive, equally emotional, perhaps sarcastic reply, often with a dozen people CC'd.
That need for speed, that feeling of, I must correct the record right now.
That is the impulse you must resist with extreme prejudice. The discipline required here is monumental. You must physically step away, close the laptop, stand up, walk away from the keyboard, take a physical, intentional breath.
And what do you do in that pause?
You use that imposed pause to engage your prefrontal cortex, your cool brain, and ask one critical question. If I send this now, what outcome am I creating? Does this solve the problem, or does it just satisfy my temporary need for release? The pause allows you to choose a wise response, rather than allowing your emotional reaction to create a new, worse problem.
Well, let's bring in the urgency of professional image. Concept C, speed and fairness. When you are professionally attacked or misrepresented or deliberately targeted with falsehoods, waiting to respond can be misinterpreted as validation of the attack. You feel compelled to correct the record instantly to protect your professional image and maintain integrity. If you wait, you risk allowing the false narrative to solidify in the minds of the recipients. Waiting, in this light, it feels like capitulation to the lie, not wisdom.
That compulsion to correct immediately is the short-term mind-trading, long-term influence for short-term emotional release. Look at the nuance, the long game of reputation.
The long game.
An emotional reaction, especially one born of defensiveness and anger, almost always damages relationships and chips away at your self-image. People remember the uncontrolled reaction much longer than they remember the specifics of the original attack. Strength is never shown when things are easy. It is shown precisely when your feelings are strongest and your patience is thinnest.
So the wise response takes its time.
It moves slowly. It chooses words or continued silence that actively build peace and progress, not words that you will have to retract or apologize for later. Think of it this way. When you wait, you are allowing the other person's impulsive behavior to contrast sharply with your grounded response. Their speed looks reckless. Your deliberation looks authoritative.
So you win by not playing their game.
Control over your reaction is the ultimate form of self-leadership. You are managing yourself, not merely the situation, and that is a display of character that cannot be faked or purchased.
That control is everything. If we expand that idea outward, maintaining internal control so we can better read others, we must transition from just hearing the text of the message to reading the feeling behind it. This is about tone.
This moves us into a deeper form of listening, studying people's tone, not just what they say. We live with the fundamental delusion that words are the primary vehicle for communication.
But they're not.
They're not. Tone carries the emotional context. Tone reveals true intention, and often it directly contradicts the literal words being spoken. If you only listen to the surface words, the colleague who says, "I'm fine," with a flat, cold delivery and minimal eye contact, you completely miss the deeper message.
A message of tension or fatigue.
Or hidden distress, yes. And that mismatch, the gap between the tone and the text, is what causes listeners to walk away feeling confused or uneasy even when they heard positive words. Their gut registered the tone, but their intellect registered the text.
Tone is the truth filter.
It is. Let's use the forced compliment scenario. Imagine a friend or a colleague, someone you work closely with, and maybe even are competing with, congratulates you on your recent significant success, say a huge promotion or a major client win.
Okay.
The words are overtly positive. That is fantastic news. You absolutely deserve it. No one works harder than you. But their voice is strained, or it carries an almost imperceptible edge of sarcasm, annoyance, or irritation.
The words are congratulatory, but the tone signals resentment.
It signals resentment, competition, or perhaps intense internal struggle with their own perceived lack of success. If you accept the words at face value and ignore that strained tone, you accept the surface mask. And you completely miss the underlying truth about the relational dynamic.
And that's critical information.
That information, the resentment, the competition, is critical data you need to manage that relationship moving forward. Ignoring the tone is ignoring reality.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But here is where we must exercise some caution. Concept C. The danger of reading too much into it. We are complex, variable creatures. Everyone has bad days. Voices fluctuate due to simple stress, lack of sleep, or even just a head cold. How do we ensure we are tuning into strategic, meaningful data, the actual dynamic, instead of simply reacting to random human variability or worse, projecting our own insecurities and anxieties onto the speaker?
That is the essential boundary we must maintain. The intention here is paramount. This is the nuance. Empathy and insight. The goal of this heightened awareness is not judgment, and it is certainly not paranoia. It's about connecting to the feeling and responding with empathy rather than correcting the text or diagnosing a flaw.
Okay, so what does that sound like in practice?
Well, if the strained tone suggests fatigue or hidden anxiety, the proper empathetic response isn't to say, "I think you're lying about being happy for me." That's just accusatory, and it breaks trust instantly.
Right. So what does the non-literal empathetic response sound like?
It sounds like, I appreciate that, thank you. But, you sound incredibly tired today. Is everything genuinely okay, or are you just running on empty? This is a non-literal response that builds immediate trust and emotional safety. You are acknowledging their reality, the tone, without making them defensive about the text. This gives you a massive edge in understanding their true needs, which is the foundation of influence. You address the human behind the words.
That's powerful. You bypass the surface level of communication to address the emotional context. Okay, we've covered disciplined attention, strategic quiet, interpreting deflection, and emotional control. This is a massive shift in mindset. We need to transition now into the final phase. How does the listener actually integrate these disciplines into their daily life?
The integration phase is where the work truly begins, because these are not concepts you just read about. They are muscles you must exercise consistently.
Okay, let's unpack this. The first key takeaway focuses on the foundational attitude we need to adopt: listening like a learner.
This habit demands radical curiosity and intellectual humility. The crucial, immediate habit you must drop is the assumption that you already know the answer.
The full cup approach.
Exactly. Most people listen with their mind already full of their own answers or experiences, their biases. They listen only to confirm or refute their existing viewpoint. But if you approach every single interaction with radical curiosity, listening purely to discover, not to reply, you open yourself up entirely to new data.
What's the direct, measurable relevance of adopting that stance? What does it get you?
The relevance is profound, especially for those in positions of leadership or mastery. When you genuinely listen with the intention to learn, you stop defending your ego. You stop needing to be the smartest person in the room because you are focused on becoming the most informed person in the room.
And that changes everything.
It allows you to ask dramatically better questions. Instead of asking questions designed to prove your point or expose a flaw, you ask questions designed to fill the gaps in your own understanding.
Questions like, tell me more about the assumptions underpinning that idea, instead of, but wouldn't my idea be better because of X, Y, and Z?
Exactly. This habit of discovery leads to rapid personal evolution, because every single conversation becomes a free consulting service for your own life and your own thinking. You refine your mental models constantly. You use others' perspectives to challenge your own blind spots, meaning you become exponentially smarter, faster than the person who is always talking just to prove what they already know.
And often the only way to get to that level of quiet humility is through disciplined solitude, which brings us to the second key takeaway: the training ground of silence.
Inner strength is never forged in public. It is built in private, away from applause, distraction, and external validation. If you are always running from quiet, always filling the air with noise, always needing the headphone, you are fundamentally running from the person you actually are.
So it's about self-confrontation.
It is. Quiet moments, 5 dedicated minutes in the morning, a walk without your digital input, time where you stop performing, are the necessary space to look inward.
Why is that internal looking so crucial for external influence?
Because this solitude provides the only environment where you can ask the necessary uncomfortable questions that lead to strategic clarity. Am I acting from a place of genuine strength or hidden fear? Am I being driven by my core values or by external pressure and expectations? You are forced to confront the gaps between the person you present to the world and the person you are actually choosing to be.
So the silence is the gym for mental and emotional resilience. It's where we practice self-leadership.
Precisely. The relevance here is self-control and sustainability. This solitude builds unshakable control over your mind. It separates what truly matters, your mission, your values, your health, from what merely drains your energy. The noise, the gossip, the irrelevant input, it provides the clarity needed to respond wisely when external pressures inevitably rise, instead of reacting impulsively. You stop needing chaos to feel alive or competent, and instead, you find a deep, sustainable strength in stillness. If you can sit comfortably and honestly with yourself, accepting your own internal reality, you can handle any external pressure the world throws at you. You start building yourself from the inside out, making your decisions durable.
This entire deep dive has been a masterclass in restraint. We've established that the loudest voice is rarely the most influential, and that true, sustainable power lies in intentional attention and controlled, disciplined response. It sounds like a formula for mastery, but one that requires immense humility and daily discomfort. You have to be willing to be the quietest person in the room.
It demands total dedication to the discomfort of not knowing and the discomfort of not needing to be right immediately. And as you mull over these ideas, the value of holding your thoughts, the necessity of waiting for deflection, the immense power of controlling your emotional outburst. I want you to consider this final provocative thought. If you were to calculate the true, quantifiable cost in lost trust, damaged relationships, missed strategic opportunities, and the sheer amount of regret you carried of the words you spoke unnecessarily last week, would you find that your most powerful untapped asset is not your voice, but your restraint?
That is a challenging, chilling calculation. The silence we run from is often the very thing we need to face to truly grow. We challenge you to embrace the discomfort of silence, to listen like a learner, and to discover the immense, quiet power that comes when you choose to be the observer, the synthesist, and the architect of your own intentional response, rather than simply the performer.